and are going to get started in just a second. So why don't you go into the chat, give us a note on where you're dialing in from and what do you do. So excited to be kicking off our third part of our webinar series with the Design Executive Council, Modernizing Research with AI, Customer Centricity at Scale. We have an amazing panel today who will be discussing retaining customer centricity when everyone builds. And if we just go over to the next slide, we have a few housekeeping remarks. All right, apologize for being a little slow there. But this session is being recorded. You will receive the recording by the end of the week, most likely tomorrow morning. So look in your inbox and find the recording there and share it with your team. We'll also have an open Q&A at the end. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible. So use the Q&A feature in Zoom and drop your questions in there, but also be part of the discussion and leverage our chat feature as well. And I'd love to tell you about these fine folks putting on the webinar today. So we'll get started with the Design Executive Council. We've been working with the Design Executive Council for probably a year now. We have an amazing partnership putting on content together. But the Design Executive Council is a premier membership network for senior designers, leaders, and experienced executives shaping the world's most influential companies. And at Dscout, we are an AI-powered research platform for capturing in-context insights from high-quality participants. Some of the biggest brands use Dscout to test ideas, iterate quickly, and collaborate and build confidently. And with that said, I would love to introduce today's host, Gordon Ching, founder and CEO of the Design Executive Council. Gordon, take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone. So excited to be here. Third part of our webinar series, and we've brought together an amazing group of people. I'm Gordon Ching, founder CEO of Design Executive Council. I have the privilege of leading this incredible group to helping our industry navigate what's next as AI is really transforming our practices. But at the same time, we have to talk also about how we're going to collaborate and change the ways we collaborate. So we have an amazing group of people here. The first person I'm going to introduce here is Taylor, who's the director of research from Dscout. We were joking earlier that she's like the researcher of researchers. So Taylor, tell us a little bit about your role.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Taylor Classman, Director of Research at Dscout. It is, in fact, an incredibly meta role because I lead a team of researchers at a research company. We do research on researchers, so very layered and meta indeed. And I've actually been with the company for many years and started our research practice here, so even more meta in that way. Like I said, I lead a small group of research practitioners and do research myself. And we really are in an interesting position because we are building products for you all, and at the same time grappling with this world ourselves. So we are grappling with the same questions and concerns that you all are. So the topic today feels really urgent and relevant, and really excited to be here with this amazing group of folks to talk about it.
Awesome. And I'm so excited to introduce Rachel Bean, who's SVP of Design at Expedia Group and also a member of the Design Executive community. Rachel, tell us what you do.
What do I do? Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. Happy to be here. Thanks, Gordon, for the invite. I oversee the design team, and the design team consists of product design, research, content strategy, design ops, as well as a small team called customer advocacy, which is an interesting hybrid between service design and analytics. So a broad group of folks. And for those who don't know, Expedia is a pretty large travel brand. We have a long tail of a bunch of different travel products, but also three core products, which is Vrbo, Expedia, and hotels.com. So a lot of surfaces to play with.
Awesome. Nice. And Alyssa, so good to have you with us in Rachel's team. Tell us about your role as head of research at Expedia.
Yes, thank you, Gordon. I'm very privileged to be a part of Rachel's team here at Expedia, leading research. I lead a team of qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods UX researchers all over the world who help shape the design direction and strategy as a part of Rachel's team here at Expedia Group. I've been here for about 8 years, so I've gotten to see this team in a lot of different evolutions over time and get to be a part of this really exciting transformation that we're going through right now.
Awesome. Mary, who's VP of Product Design at Cisco. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Very excited to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. So I lead UX within Cisco. I lead UX in our networking business unit. And my team includes researchers, designers, design ops, content design, similar to Rachel's org. And I have been a hands-on practitioner and leader in research design, service design throughout my career, with a reasonable focus on innovation, using methods to help drive innovation. So yeah, thanks. Thanks for the intro.
And last but not least, Matthew Menz, who's the former VP of CX at Amazon Web Services. Welcome, Matthew.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I've just completed a 10-year tour where I had led all things CX, so all channels from the networking proxy and hosting systems to all of the teams that enabled us to grow from 70 services to well over 300. Kind of a rapid scaling journey. I think when I started, it was around a 7 billion run rate, and it's just crossed 140. So it was a pretty impactful decade of a lot of scaling across analytics and research and design and many other things.
And so to get into the session today, this is kind of the focus of our conversation. So we're in track 3 of the broader question of what is the role of research teams when everyone can research? This one is going to be about how do we retain that customer centricity when everyone starts building? And the 3 questions we're going to go through today are really building on the insights that we've been gathering from the prior track. AI is not simply helping research teams work faster, it is raising their ambition and reshaping where they can create value. 3 kind of major things that came out. We're seeing an upstreaming of research where that reclaimed time is moving towards activities around problem framing, longitudinal research, and the kind of customer understanding that changes strategy, not just confirms it downstream. Secondly, I know we talk so much about tools, but we also need to talk more about how we're rebuilding collaboration within our teams and also cross-functionally. So this is going to, think about how are we using that time savings and our leadership to really improve how we work together. And finally, it's not just about, we often say AI, human in the loop. I actually think it's more about AI in the loop. So how do we change and rise the role of accountability as we help steward more oversight around AI systems that can absolutely amplify risk, but we need to think about how do we manage this when teams are no longer in every single decision and room where this happens. So a lot of democratization of research itself, but greater needs around collaboration and how we rethink where the value is being created. And what we're going to take you through today is 3 parts: maintaining rigor without proximity, retaining trust at the speed of AI, and building for customer centricity at scale. So the first question to kick us off here: how are you preserving research quality and rigor as insight generation becomes more distributed? And how are you governing that democratization without becoming a bottleneck? Because we have heard time and time again, speed is the number one storyline right now that we're hearing in large enterprises. And Brian from the last panel gave us a great quote at Nationwide. No matter how wrong the AI might be, we don't penalize the AI. We penalize the person who approves the work. So we need to put systems in place that make these tools work better for us. So how are we doing this? To kick it off, Taylor, I'd love to hear from you from the Dscout perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny, I kind of think we live in a post-democratization world at Dscout. I'm scared. I can't see any of the attendees' faces, but I'm looking at my fellow panelists' faces. I hope that's not too much of a hot take, but yeah, we're kind of past the democratization conversation a bit. And a few years ago, when we were really in the heat of this conversation, my team created a program called Powdered Donut. We love a theme, so people who do research donut. It was very cute. We had a lot of art to go along with it. And it was really robust. There were trainings, there were templates for folks to use. It was all based in Notion, and it was all very human-led. A human had to, go through the process. A human on my team would review the work coming out of it. And a few years ago, that worked really well. And I think taught designers and engineers and product managers some of the best practices of our craft. But to your point, it's too slow now. And that process just became too cumbersome. And so what we've sort of shifted towards is actually using AI to do some of that shepherding of best practices. So our first foray into that was probably a year ago, where we built a custom gem. We were using Gemini at the time that took in all of that powdered donut information that we had. And instead of a human needing to kind of go through that process, the gem did that on behalf of the human. And really what that meant was we knew that the outputs were informed by our team's best practices and kind of the voice we had created. So back to this idea of how meta my role is, that process informed a Dscout product called Draft Your Study that, a research team can say, these are the context documents we want to upload. All of the research created on Dscout, no matter who's doing it, we want it to look like XYZ. And that came out of this democratization program. So governance, we might be post democratization in terms of the conversations we're having, but certainly not in terms of the governance that we're trying to implement both on our team and in our products.
From one researcher to another, Alyssa, I'm curious to get your POV on this.
Yeah, I think it's interesting for us because we never really democratized research in that way. What we've done instead is thinking about the insights that we generate, almost treating AI as an additional stakeholder. So how, we're so focused on the way that we generate insights being in the right moment for the right person to be able to take that information and make an important decision. So how does that change the way that we conduct the work if we think about AI as a part of that equation as well? So we're focused a lot right now. I was having a great conversation with a product partner about this just yesterday. She's trying to develop this multi-agent ecosystem to do effectively, a version of deep research. And she's, one of the agents in her ecosystem is one that we've created who's looking through past research insights. And she and I were working together to frame the prompts and the ways of working for that agent to be able to go back to our work and pull it up and reframe it, using this new system. And so we've kind of thought about it in that way of how do we make sure that the way that we generate outputs can sort of fit into this new way of working so that we're still treated as the subject matter experts and kind of the bearers of truth when it comes to human insight and research insight, but that we're also meeting our stakeholders where they're at, which is right, building, creating, using AI as a part of their workflows. So we're kind of taking that approach.
I think it's so amazing to hear how you guys are responding to the need for speed. Rachel, I'm curious, like, what are you seeing around sort of your business stakeholders on this topic that
Yeah.
ties to this?
No, I think it's what Alyssa is saying is right on. And I think our research team has done a fantastic job creating sort of the right degree of proliferation of the research. So for example, all of the incredible work that Alyssa's team has been doing is available via Glean. So you can ask our internal proprietary agent at any moment for research insights, which is that access and creating those moments of access are incredibly important because I know there's been times where it's just like, okay, let me pull up that report and that manual labor associated with getting you the right things at the right time. And also the sort of the dynamic synthesis that access allows. Like if you ask a multi-part question that pulls together 5 different reports that Alyssa's team has done over the years, then we can see much more of a synthesis of that data coming together. I also think like one of the things that I've been the most excited about with Alyssa's team is this hybridization that I'm seeing with her team of going much more into product management and strategic roles. Now that a lot of the labor of some of that synthesis is being done through some of these tools, I think having that access and that being at that epicenter of the data and knowing what our users want has allowed Alyssa's team to really start playing in kind of the prototyping space of actually putting together product proposals. So I'm very excited to see that. Their team is also putting together a lot new tooling to kind of release a lot of capabilities within the product team for folks to make things dynamically. But also Alyssa's team really like coming to the table as sort of new hybrids between research and strategy is an exciting, I think, moment for us related to this technology.
Mary?
Yeah, 100% to what Alyssa and Rachel shared. I think on a panel last week, I think I mentioned that I believe that researchers can rule the world. I do think that all of this is unlocking so much potential. Researchers are customer-centered by nature, highly strategic, systematic thinkers, creative, and by looking at ways to kind of automate things, like I would say, like in the second diamond, not everything, because like our researchers are still developing the guidelines and the standards for what happens there and what we're going to automate. But it's just freeing up this time for them to shift left. And yeah, I mean, some of the things that we're doing, I mean, similarly, we have a research repository that is being made available to everyone. And so it's just, I mean, remember the days when you used to like take weeks, you're like, oh, I think we learned something along those lines before. And you would ask around and, for weeks you'd be poking around for insights. I mean, now we're making that research available to everyone. And people can build on top of it as well through MCP, but they can't change the data in those scenarios. But there's a bunch of things that we're doing to help ensure that the results and the insights are used in reasonable ways. So, for example, the structure of the responses can kind of help contextualize the results. The kind of the contract is designed to prevent like over claiming by forcing answers to like lead with a direct answer, separate evidence types, expose caveats. So there's a lot of like rigor that's gone into the design of this framework, so people don't abuse whatever comes back to them. There's a lot more I can say. I mean, I think there's a couple other things maybe I'll just mention quickly as we are making some tools like Maze available for other teams to leverage. But again, like our researchers are building standards, helping people use tools in the right way. We're also exploring an AI workforce, I would say like research agent or like partner who, isn't going to take the role of the researcher, but it can be, an expert who can point you to all the resources and the tools that our team is creating, provide guidance, help people process insights in the right way. So just kind of helping people like raise the bar on the nature of how they're working with insights that are out in the world.
Matthew, before I jump to Mary, is the research designing how the AI responds?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think similar, like Alyssa, I heard some of this from you as well. It's like we're designing the agents. Like we're building the context, and there's a couple different ways this is showing up. We're building the agent, so when people access the repository, insights are coming back in a way that we feel good about. So it won't be somebody runs wild with a one-off insight. We're also being really careful about how PII and sensitive data is being handled. Again, so we're not kind of letting that information out into the world, and all of this has to be designed by our research experts. And just shout out, I have to do a shout out to Daniel, Haneen, and Sarah, my research leaders, and Ben, who's a researcher on our team, who's really helping pave the way. It's incredible to see all of our teams become builders.
Yeah. Matthew, AWS scale speed, it's the name of your game. So
Yeah.
what was that like?
It's a little bit of the bring many of these together. The democratization happens years ago. The journey from um, multiple methods with multiple research types into a more insights-driven structure, into a repository, into early day meta-analysis of very durable insights. And then it's about accessing that information. So you take this interesting journey and then you democratize the access and you govern the way it's presented. But I think the other part of it that we haven't yet talked about is research is super specific to an outcome or a learning that you're interested in. And so understanding where you are in the business process is more important than what method you're using, because the method follows the intent. So am I doing very early stage understanding? Am I fine-tuning a very specific process? Am I trying to drive a conversion rate? Right? You can research each one of those things, and that will drive a methodology, and that will also drive how you structure something. And so research isn't research isn't research. I think that how you approach it and how you frame it is super, super important. And it's very easy to just agent it away. An agent just came up with the insight, and I think that's really a big part of um, the struggles I think a lot of people have is we moved from a very simple qual quant world. Are you sitting down with someone or are you doing a survey into a full mixed methods world into a mediated methods world? And I think that shift has been really profound, and still we're figuring it out.
I think leading into the next question is I'm hearing nods around agentic design and researchers actually building that out. I'm really curious in sort of this next question is how do you know those are landing? How are you tracking and amplifying that so that the trust equation or the rigor equation is actually happening? So I'm kind of curious how researchers at scale are thinking about this now that agents are an interface layer for how, insight gets delivered. Um, Rachel, do you want to take us off here?
Sure, I'll kick it off. And I think like there's always sort of the measurement question that comes into play in terms of kind of the agent behavior. But I feel like we have a pretty rigorous system in terms of consistent measurement, right? So we go through the process of earlier integrating a lot of the research methodology and research that Alyssa is doing into the product team. I think one of the things that I came in last year is work with Alyssa to say, how do we get you upper funnel? How do we make sure that all of the work that you're doing is integrating not only after the PRDs have been written and the strategy docs and the BRDs are written, but getting everything to actually influence a lot of that work. And we've seen such incredible progress. And then maintaining a lot of that work, that tracking, the qual and quant work that you're doing throughout the entire process of executing a feature or a big product launch. So as we go through, then how do we then, measure and continuously build feedback on the things that we're releasing after getting a lot of the research work upper funnel? So I think it's just a continuous process of measuring product success through our proprietary systems of kind of customer happiness, and it's just a continuous cycle of doing this. So I don't think that sort of methodology has changed. I think it's just making sure that we can get research much more upper funnel and influencing a lot of the kind of the product, again, docs and sort of business requirements earlier in the funnel so we can measure it throughout the entirety of like build to launch.
Yeah. Alyssa, tell us a little bit about, the shift as you moved up. Like, how's that fundamentally changed how you work?
I think that the kind of amazing benefit of this, if you flip this question sort of on its head, the amazing benefit is that researchers are only human beings. They can only be in so many places at once. And when we want research to be influential at all of these different levels and dimensions, that's asking a lot of human beings to be in every room, to be in every conversation where human insight is going to be beneficial to guide a decision, which is most discussions and most decisions. So I think that the incredible benefit is that the researchers can really guide the way that that information flows through and then serve as that sense-making layer who is there to help to, you know, take in the copious amount of data, more data than we've ever had access to before, because of these systems being in place, and help the stakeholders understand what makes the most sense or what to use to guide decision making. In kind of that more hands-on strategic fashion, rather than being the sole executors who need to go and gather the insights, interpret them, come back to the room. Here's the insights, go forth and do what you will. It really serves as creating more of a call and response that can be ongoing to say, like, we're learning this new information. How does this change the equation? How does this sort of change the landscape? And the researcher can help to be sort of that guide. So we really, I think that this is absolutely going to be a big part of the future of the discipline is really to help guide through, as the data continues to increase and increase over time, to really be that sense maker, that truth teller, who helps to distill down the most important information to guide decisions.
Yeah, Alyssa, as I think about this, and Taylor, I'm curious to your thoughts here. It's almost like researchers without these tools would end up being a bottleneck in the age of incredible speed, and how we reframe sort of that understanding of AI as one of those teammates that we work with. Taylor, what are you kind of seeing as you're seeing so many teams also change and adopt these practices across the board?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One area that I think is important to talk about is evaluations of AI outputs. So when you're actually building AI features. And for us, Mary, I love that you said that researchers can rule all, because that was kind of our approach with evals of AI outputs, that researchers on my team were seated as the benevolent dictators, which I hate that that's the phrase we use in this world, but I don't think we've replaced it yet. But basically informing and evaluating the AI outputs, and very much being a human in the loop, Gordon, to your earlier point. So that trust, starting with measuring quality of AI outputs and the features that we're building at Dscout, and that we're also seeing all of our customers build in their spaces. So having a researcher at the helm of that, because we are so quality driven, because we're subject matter experts, has really that's really stood out. And then I would say, at Dscout internally, very similar stories to Mary and Alyssa. We've made our repository of data, which includes things like CSAT. It includes research insights. It has a lot of raw signals that we're capturing, and making that available to folks at scale, with guardrails, has been incredible for seeing that data show up in PRDs, like Rachel was talking about. And that kind of human curation layer of the repository helps us feel confident that that data is kind of fueling the conversation and the agenda, with that kind of human judgment layer.
Yeah. Do you guys find this analogy working? Because as I'm hearing so much about opening of repositories, it's almost like we've opened the doors to what we've held for so long. And so, how do you make sure when everyone's walking into those doors that this is actually working? Matthew, I know you've talked so much about frameworks and measurement and the right intent. So, how's this kind of playing out in how you were stewarding customer centricity at scale?
What's is interesting because so much early research is in the formative stage. It was very tightly coupled with design and product, and you're testing ideas and you're understanding the space. And the intent was always move left, get there to drive strategy, understand space, understand trends, and then do some validation. Don't test a hypothesis that is kind of random. Like help build that loop. And what I found is once we found places where that was working really well, I loved to place research in a place very differently, which was in this deep summative BI teams, to actually have clear understanding and research methodology to something which is purely business analytics. So you take funnel, the simplest example in the world, right, is how do you fix a funnel? And yes, there are errors, but what kind of errors and where do they show up and in which regions? And I mean, there's so many ways to slice that. And what I've found is that when you bring the research skill set to guide those agents, to guide that approach, you unlock something so quickly and critically because it's not we had a strategy and it was 6 months to a year to see whether it did because there's always everyone wants a validation. What did the research do? Prove it to me. And in this way, it was a very tactical, quick turn way of validating change. Um, and then using that as the way to inform and kind of create a loop into early stage strategy. Instead of them being very decoupled, we really wanted to create something that gave you a full cycle and could be automated as much as possible. But it wasn't that's the analytics and BI team. Research can't touch that. It was how do we bring these things together in new ways? So data is data, and how do we normalize that really pointed towards business outcomes?
Mary, any thoughts on sort of as it's starting to land with these new systems, like how are you actually as an executive overseeing, monitoring whether it's working or not?
Um, Gosh, well,
I think you just guess. That's the best
metrics,
strategy. Just
Hard
guessing.
question.
metrics is a hot topic right now. It's like we've been talking a lot about anecdotes, like there's like it's so hard to get a baseline for everything that we're doing, and we could spend all of our time getting the baseline, or we could spend all of our time, working on the quality of these tools and driving, more automation, that's going to help our teams like, shift left, more strategic. So I've been honestly really encouraging us to think a lot about anecdotes. Like, you can tell when something you did before. I mean, I just talked about like where we tried to hunt down a prior research report and it would take literally a couple weeks and now we can just find it. And I think there's other examples like that. And I guess I would like something I would like to like how do we measure if it's going well? Like maybe a slightly new angle to bring that we haven't talked about yet is the quality of the cross-functional collaboration. Like what we see when we get our teams working in kind of more highly agentic ways, empowered with insights, the quality of that collaboration is so much stronger. It's like before we used to like have to hunt for our stuff and kind of do our part. But something that I'm seeing actually research drive in a big way related to the kind of this context engine is lean in with their product partners. So when a cross-functional team kicks off, like we've been talking about context more generally, but I'll do a shout out to a researcher on our team, Betsy, who kind of spearheaded this idea of a project context brain. So working really closely with their product partners, their designers, their engineers, so they all start building this kind of project context where insights before PRD, to Rachel's point, like I always say, like, what fun is it to come in after a PRD? Like, our job as UX is like super boring if that's the case. So, like, getting in there and working with our product partners to start building that context for the project, and ultimately helping ensure that everything is customer centered through that work, that the insights are searchable in a way that's meaningful. That context eventually lives side by side by the PRD and the other project context. So again, this is like a softer measure of success. But when I see that team like working really closely and building that together, that's a huge sign of
Yeah.
success.
Rachel, I know we talked so much about having more fun last week at, Config together. And Mary mentioned about, are you having more fun as a team? That's a very interesting provocation. I know you raised your hand. What were you going to say about it?
Oh, I was just going to say this measure of success, but I really do want to talk about fun because it's my favorite topic of conversation. But I was just saying, like on success, like when access to data is infinitely easier, I think it mitigates a lot of the excuses around not knowing something. So an example of that is Alyssa always calls out, and I use this now in my personal life, human truths. What is a human truth? We have a lot of research on human truths. For example, people cannot hold X amount of information at in their head at any given moment. So on a card, when you're explaining something, don't put 37 different facts. I think moments like that where historically maybe acts, that particular designer working on that particular card may not have had facilitated access to understanding those human truths. We've done 7 different research reports on and brought in behavioral psychology on. Like, there's just no excuse anymore to not have that type of access. So it changes sort of the success equation because access is so proliferated. So that's all I would say about some of the success metrics. And then on fun, I guess I just want to call out an anecdote. I had a leadership offsite in December. I think it was in December, Alyssa, in London. Maybe it was in November. And we had a small agency come into our team, our core leadership team, and basically run point on a kind of a Cursor, Claude code, vibe coding, and prototyping workshop. And what I saw across the team, everyone kind of produced prototypes using data repositories and kind of SQL repositories. And Alyssa, I just want to say, Alyssa's by far was the best because kind of the understanding of data and how to plug that into creating like a really compelling narrative around a product experience. You're so laser focused on understanding how to use data to get a really great kind of outcome and experience. And I thought that was such, what Mary's saying around researchers going to rule the world. That was a moment where I understood something about sort of vibe coding and creating a lot of the future of products within our discipline. Is data is such an incredible gold mine to actually making great product suites, and who owns a lot of that data and who understands that data more intimately in our design discipline. A lot of that is research. So I thought that was a moment. Maybe that was fun for me. It was very, Alyssa, what was the
It was
product for
fun for
you?
me.
You made an alien abduction product. It was super fun, but I think that was just like a very exciting unlock moment where I understood the power of my research team to be able to actually own so much of our product portfolio.
I think what's interesting, moving into the third question we have here, is sort of this awakening of what, new roles and collaboration is unlocked in this moment. And so this question is going a little further on what we've talked about, is what does it take for research to lead on customer understanding, simply to respond to it? And Shuman from Datadog shared with us, while design moves downstream closer to code, research needs to move upstream to be ahead of everyone in understanding the customer. So building on Rachel, what you just unlocked last December with Alyssa, I'd love to hear, from Taylor, you like, what have you seen spending so much time with other Dscout customers, researchers, as they start to maybe awaken this learning, or how awake are we on this opportunity?
Yeah, I would say from our perspective, the research community has been murmuring on this for many years.
Mm,
We actually at Collab, which is a Dscout leadership conference last year, we talked a lot about continuous discovery. So this was something we've been thinking and talking about, and the industry has been thinking about for a long time, where kind of silently moving away from I'm going to have 12 interviews in 6 weeks. I'm going to have a research report that I hand over towards much more continuous learning. And it wasn't, Matthew, to an earlier point that you made, it wasn't a methodological shift. It really was a mindset shift that we were witnessing, and sort of a pragmatic response to just how quickly people around us were needing insights and were needing information. So I'm super optimistic about this. I think the research community is already here. I think we've actually kind of we've been on the road to getting here for quite a few years at this point. And I think, maintaining that ecosystem of learning or that drive towards learning, I think is the role of research leaders and uh, leaders all around. I feel like that's really our main drive right now.
Alyssa, what would you give advice to other leaders, your peers, looking to take on a more upstream role and have that leadership? What did it take for you, and what would you reflect back on?
Yeah, I think I would have a couple pieces of advice. I think the first is researchers by nature are curious people. That's why many of us got into the practice of research because we like to ask questions, we like to understand things, and what resonated for certainly for my stakeholders and I think for my team as we've been kind of reshaping this direction, Rachel alluded to this earlier, is really taking a step back and thinking more about the human being and the psychology and their kind of behavioral science lens to how they're making decisions and how our products fit into the decisions that they're making every day. The more that we focus our research efforts on some of that as kind of an underpinning, there's no possible way that we could do research at the speed of AI, as you said, before. If we were to try and do, research in a very traditional way to keep up with the iterative process as everyone is building and prototyping, it would not be possible. Like we wouldn't be able to do it with any type of scale. Rather, if we take a step back and focus on building a really strong shared foundation with our stakeholders that says, here is the person, here are their limitations, right? This technology is not changing, it's very old. And kind of reorient towards that discussion, then everyone is building and prototyping with that shared language, right, as a starting point. And that allows for everything to kind of move in a more kind of bonded together fashion. We all have to be rowing the same way, right? So the best thing that we can do is to help set that context. And I wanted to also say kind of to the previous discussion and the point around fun, which I also really love talking about. One of the ways to see if this is successful within your own team, maybe also a hot take, is engagement. I've never met a researcher in my life who didn't want to be more strategic or be a part of strategic conversations. So what is the vibe on the team, right? Are people feeling engaged? Are they feeling connected to what they're doing? The more strategic the work kind of becomes, the more they're going to respond in that way. So I think to know if you're kind of making this shift in a successful way, you can always look inward into your own team.
Yeah, where are the insights showing up organically and how much heat do they have, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and how does your team feel about it? Like how do they
Mm.
feel about the way that the work is being represented and their new role in this kind of new ecosystem?
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah,
think
Matthew, do
yeah, I'll build on that. I think it's so interesting, this notion of we have a big repository and we do meta-analysis and it's the foundation, which I think is critical, but and also everything moves fast, but why can't it just be real time? Right? That's where that's the other problem we all need to solve. It all needs to be real time all the time instantly. And one way that kind of leaned into that was kind of to your point, Rachel's data is everything. And data is fundamentally disconnected in most companies. And so a big program that we put a lot of investment and energy into was creating a controlled vocabulary across 6 or 7 major data marts across the company so we could start to bring together real-time insights from actual behavior that's happening in the product by a bunch of different ways to slice it. So you become a researcher of millions simultaneous behaviors versus someone who is anticipating a potential outcome. So you're actually, I think, in a stream of information versus doing isolated and more insular analysis. And when you go there, everybody's involved. You get this really interesting product engagement, GM engagement, architecture engagement, because you want to understand collectively what the data means. And as a research leader, you can guide that in a way very few can. And I think that creates incredible power in a place that a lot of people just are nervous about because it's fairly obfuscated. No one wants to do data cleaning in ETL across 7 data marts with terabytes of data. Like that's a different person's job, but it's not anymore. Like it actually, I think there's this powerful bridge. That's the stuff we all want to play with. And it's been sectioned away, but we can get real time. And I think moving research to real time is super powerful and exciting.
One
Yeah,
thing to
real-time
add to that,
research.
Matthew, it was like I had an interesting conversation last week with Charlie Sutton, who's the CDO at Atlassian, and we were on a panel about agents at Config, and we were talking about this like incredible proliferation of agents that are doing data synthesis work that are just synthesizing, and just giving this readout. And he's like, we are now experiencing a new problem, which is there's so much synthesis that we need a synthesizer to synthesize the synthesis. Do we need, and I think there's an interesting role, again, for what you were saying, for research to really be the synthesizer of the synthesis, to kind of mitigate the noise that now these new capabilities are creating with synthesis.
100%. I mean, each group, like there is the person who really cares about revenue. There's the person who really cares about support. There's the person who really cares about completion. We care about everything.
That's right.
And none of it is in isolation because that's what your job is. Our job as research is to understand and can make those
Mm.
connections and everything gets unlocked.
Is this the rise of the super researcher, the researcher on top of all the synthesis, the Godzilla? I don't know. Mary, what are your final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I have maybe two new angles, I think. I mean, the first one is about still shifting left and this time that's freed up for more strategic work. Um, and like, I think it's important for researchers to kind of go like, I feel like we got so busy and everybody was so constrained. I mean, just over the last few years, things just got tighter and tighter, and it just made it harder for us to do foundational research or really bring out those methods that were highly creative and could help expose new ideas or unveil new opportunities with customers. One person on my team, Tim Shiner, I see Mariam here. We've been talking about this. He talked about he was trying to use the manufacturing of hardware process as a way to talk about the double diamond, and the first diamond being like R&D, and the second diamond being the manufacturing engine. And like, there's a lot we can automate in the manufacturing engine, but so much of there's so much opportunity right now for research and development in this era where customers don't know what they want. For us to explore and be really creative in that kind of R&D space. So I don't know. I would just, we're talking a lot about data and strategy, but I think there's this creative aspect of bringing, um, you know, um, spending some time bringing methods for innovation, including co-creation and other things. And then the last thing along these lines are like, I guess my like, I don't know if it's really a hot take, but I would just say like researchers, like be bold and brave about how your role evolves. Like, I'm not kidding when I really believe that us have the skill set to just have impact beyond anything that we've uh, imagined possible. Researchers do tend to be a bit conservative. I mean, they've been the ones to bring like rigor and like rationale, which is super important, but like find your creativity, try things out, take some risks, be bold, get into the vibe coding, because you know what we should be building. So like build some of those options for teams to consider and, you know, be curious about the boundaries.
Yeah. To take it to the Q&A, I think there's a fantastic question from Matt McQueen, and he asks, for better for worse, data for decision makers is just the start, but not enough. Narratives and storytelling for new products built on top of user data is how minds change and budgets open. Any great lessons learned on moving from findings to narratives that won the day?
I think I can go first. Um, I think that um, we had a really great piece of work in the past where we really aimed to integrate across this different data ecosystem, really kind of to the previous conversation we were having. Instead of looking just sort of at our own homework and then making an assessment based on the research that we'd done, really taking the extra step because we have so many of these capabilities and tools, it really empowers us to link things up in new, meaningful ways, which means like linking across, data science and analytics, bringing in market research and consumer intelligence and, different kinds of capabilities to really shape that narrative. So I do think like, to this question, that narrative is really the researchers to kind of make or break. Data storytelling is only going to get, more important as a skill set as the amount of data continues to increase. But also the expectation is that that proactive triangulation is a part of every project that we do and every narrative that we put together. Because with the amount of walls that have come down over the last 6 months in terms of access to and ability to connect things with data, it's really there's nowhere for us to hide other than to really do the due diligence of putting those pieces together. So I think it's really crucial that storytelling and especially storytelling with data is something that every researcher feels incredibly comfortable with.
Yeah, I'll punctuate with a very short anecdote where we found just nomenclature, how absolutely critical consistency of nomenclature is across products that are built by empowered leaders who are all moving very, very quickly and not necessarily in a connected way. And we just did a super straightforward analysis of like, hey, a person needs to move through all of these disparate things. And we're actually using 5 different nouns to mean the same thing. It happens everywhere all the time, but it's rarely seen because few people look across, and even fewer people use the data to tell the story to drive change. To get that change required 5, 6 very large businesses to put a lot of other things on hold so they would play nice. That is the lowest bar, but also a sign of how important just a simple, hey, have you actually seen this? Can really pay off and shifting from everyone looking at the revenue into like how does the experience actually play out and can people understand this?
Mm. Final question here from the audience. I've actually fielded this question many times. Synthetic users. How do you guys think about it? Are you using it? Are they helping teams actually move faster? Is it worth the trade-offs that you're seeing between risk and speed? Would love to hear a little bit of thoughts on this because I think this is one that I keep seeing people ask. Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, we have a fairly strong stance about this at Dscout. We see the role of synthetic users not in creating research data, but in things like if you want to pilot a study to see if your Figma links are working, to see if people are getting tripped up on a certain question set, if there's something incorrect about your survey logic. We see the role of synthetic users in that way of maintaining, quality of the actual research structure. And we are, I would say, open to this changing as things are changing so quickly. But personally, I'm not holding my breath on this one just yet, and kind of putting them in that tight box right now.
So synthetic is validator versus source information.
Exactly.
Mm. Matthew, I think you just did the super researcher job.
You
You
did.
synthesized the synthesis.
Well, I
All
would also
right.
go back to what I think Alyssa said earlier, in evaluating the outputs is key. Like our researchers need to decide if something is good enough yet to actually adopt. And there's a bunch of different products out there. We're creating some of our own things. I'm guilty of trying to create a suite of things along these lines and basic with other partners as well, and basically said, you know what, researchers, you tell me if and when this is good enough to go prime time, but until then, it's just an experiment.
I totally agree. I have an agent that searches for new publications on this topic every week, and helps synthesize them so that I can stay up to date because just the academic literature on this topic is changing on a weekly basis. There are articles being published, there's new ones previous ones that are being pulled back or changed. It's this landscape is shifting so rapidly that I think we would not be keeping our eye on kind of the horizon if we didn't stay up to date with the information that's being shared. But I agree with Taylor and with Matthew as well about kind of the current landscape as it stands right now. What we're doing is testing internal solutions as well, to not conduct new research, but rather as like almost another means of synthesis that has like a persona layer on top of it, which has been really interesting. And it's fed by our own data and insights, and it incorporates new ones as they're collected. But
Yeah.
I think this topic is really dynamic. It's exciting because it's dynamic, but it's our responsibility to do our due diligence and stay on top of it.
All right. Final question as we wrap up here. Something a little more poetic. What material and which of its properties best describe how AI is modifying the structure of your teams? Matthew, I believe you might have something of a haiku. Let's start with you.
I have no haiku in
Okay.
what material I think about in the future. It's very zen. I think phase change materials that are shifting over, like there's metals, the wax, water, like each one of those things, when put under different contexts, behave in different ways to best suit that environment. I think that is where we are. You are still who you are. We still do what we do. We adjust, and we may adjust back. Uh, and so I think
Mm.
being malleable to the environment is an interesting material property.
Rachel?
Oh my God. I was like, oh, he literally means like a material metaphor. Okay. I'll continue with the phase change,
You're
but
like
maybe
a stick.
I know. It's like material. I agree when I think about AI and just like the how it's empowering a lot of my teams, it is that malleability. And I guess that we could call it a phase change if we want to do a material metaphor, whether it's like a basic phase change of like water going from ice to
Got it.
steam to it's hybridizing. It's making all of our lives like dip into other zones and other capabilities that historically, maybe because these tools haven't existed, we haven't been able to do.
Got it. All right. We got 1 minute. Mary, kick us off. And
Okay. All right. So I'm going to stick with like researchers are magical. And I have to admit that I've been really into gardening this summer. And I just continue to be blown away by sunlight and photosynthesis. It's so magical. So I'm kind of forcing this a little, but the research team is like a leaf capturing sunlight with insights as photons that excite teams, the electrons, and help products and revenue grow to be successful, like trees flowering, fruiting tomatoes, and other acts of beauty in nature.
Next career
What was
sorted.
that?
I know, Taylor.
That was so poetic, Mary. I can't. And mine is so gross in comparison because I've been thinking like mycelium or like bacteria. I'm thinking like a sourdough starter or something that you have to like constantly feed. And it needs to be ready to go at any moment. And if you aren't constantly feeding it, you could end up with a very bad loaf of sourdough.
Mm. Alyssa.
I will say bamboo because we have to be incredibly flexible in these new ways of working, but also very strong in our craft and competencies if we're going to be flexible at all.
All right. Well, with that, this is the final section of this incredible conversation. I believe we just have one last panel coming up on July 22nd. on scaling quality with AI evaluation models. So we're definitely going to go much deeper on this. Join us for that next one. We're going to have another fantastic conversation. And I can't wait to see many of you guys soon. Thank you to our panelists, and subscribe to DXC or Dscout to continue to get invites to these special events, as we're going to have much more to come. Thank you, panelists, for the haikus and the poetry and the garden and waxing lyrics. Let's go all be super researchers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.